Thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all fine. Is it a bit hot? Sun shining. Got windows open. Don't fall asleep. So while you've been here on this course, there have been some amazing things happening on the South Coast. Some of you have heard about them already. Uh, two, one chapter, Southampton chapter, and one district, Chichester Harbour district, have done the most amazing community projects. So, first one, which I attended yesterday, was, believe it or not, fall. It was held in Goodwood House, which is a fantastic house. Some of you may know it. At the foot of the Sussex Downs, 250 people came from the local community, despite the fact that the tickets were £45, I think it was, each. And all was in order to support the RNLI, the Royal National Lifeboat Institute, which, as you may know, is one of the most amazing voluntary organizations that probably exist in this world, together with their associates in most other countries of the world. So, in the process of this event, they raised so far around just over £4,000. Probably there was another £1,000 on the way. Not certain, but likely, which will bring them up to their target, which was £5,000. All was incredibly well organized. It consisted of dinner as well as dancing, beautiful dinner, lilacs and BCGs, who I think have come from all over Atlantic quarters, added a lot, of course, as usual, for the whole event. There was an NSUK band playing. There was an NSUK cabaret. People who came from all along that area of the South Coast were just amazed at what Buddhists really are. And of course, that was the whole purpose of the event. So I really feel this event has strongly now established that very small district, which has grown over the last few years in their locality, in their community. And if any of you here in Chichester, I'd be grateful if you stand up right now and give you a great big clap. Where are you? Anyone here? Any of the men from Chichester Harbour District? No one here. They're probably still recovering. No. But it was a staggeringly good event and a very good example of the amazing variety of community projects that have occurred in the NSUK over the last 18 months in various chapters. And also, yesterday, though I can't talk about it because unfortunately I couldn't be there, there was another great event in Southampton. It was known, I believe, as the longest street party in the world. And if Dave White is back from attending it, he is there at the back. Dave, I'd be really grateful if after Gongo tomorrow morning, you could spend 2 or 3 minutes telling us a little bit about it. But I hear that something like 10,000 people were present. Is that right? Over the course of the day. Fantastic. Anyway, it was again a very, very unique event and must have, again, really opened people's eyes. The fact that Buddhism is not retreating into the background or into dark temples or into caves or onto mountaintops, but Buddhism is truly action. And that is perfect. Thank you. So I thought I'd let you know that bit of news. But I can't tell you how great they were. So now we're going to talk about senses guidance. I'm only going to take one of them. The two very long ones in your booklet And the one we're going to consider together this afternoon is headed Proudly Maintain Faith Without Regression. Who got it? Proudly maintain faith without regression. So this is one of many, many long guidances which President Decatur has been giving, as you know. But I hope you've been reading them in the UK Express over the last 8 or 9 months. And his purpose, which he stated, was that he could give guidelines to us all for another 50 years to come. In other words, every problem, obstruction, benefit, and so on, he is covering in these various guidances. The pitfalls of Causton, greatnesses and the benefits of it, and so on. So it is very important that we really deeply consider these guidances, not just reading them through, but deeply consider them in relation to our own personal lives and the problems that we see going on around us, each in our own particular environment. So this, like all the other guidances, and like any other teaching which is given in Buddhism, can be divided into the 3 sections of preparation, revelation, and transmission. How many people have not heard of that before? Please be honest. No shame on anyone. Preparation, revelation, and transmission. But that is the way, as you all really know, the Buddhas and Buddhism has always been taught. And that is the way you, each one of you, please, should teach Buddhism. Preparation is extraordinarily important. Without preparation, whoever you're talking to about Buddhism won't have geared in, won't be in rhythm with you. So that when you're giving the main thing that you want to talk about, which is the revelation, they still won't have caught up with your mind. So to prepare someone for what you're going to say is extremely important. And normally Sensei takes some historical fact or happening or incident or some local thing which everyone understands and which can gradually lead people in the way which is entirely relevant to the actual subject or revelation which he wants to make. And then in turn, revelation is useless without transmission. Revelation without transmission is nothing but theory. Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism is not in any sense, in the least possible way, concerned in theory. As you know, what Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism is concerned with is translating theory into, and without action, this Buddhism could not exist. So, not only Nichiren Daishonin, but other Buddhas, though they've sometimes been misinterpreted, also concluded their teaching with transmission, which is how to use the revelation in one's own personal life and in daily actions of human beings in society. So I divided this particular guidance up into 5 parts. Parts 1 and 2 are preparation, and I'll give you these as we go along, so that it'll give you an idea of how you also should teach. So parts 1 and 2 are preparation. Parts 3 and 4 are revelation. And part 5 is transmission. So the section on preparation, each part can be given a heading which highlights what that particular section is all about. That brings me to the next point. In Buddhism, titles are not just titles. Names are not just names. But names and titles express the entirety the subject to which they pertain. No one of you should, for example, give a title to something you've written, the UK Express, without thinking, does this title really contain everything about this art? If it does, inevitably it will be the most stirring and inspiring and encouraging title. If we just give a title of something off the top of our head, it'll probably be flat and rather shallow. And of course, this derives from the greatest title in the universe, which is Nam-myoho Renge Kyo. Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, as you know, contains everything about Buddhism. The entire, as Nichiren Daishonin put it, the entire 80,000 teachings are contained, the essence of those teachings are contained in the one phrase or title, Nam-myoho Renge. So, if one can create a great title for something, often that will rest in one's life and be remembered, and will remind one then of everything. In one of the Goshos, Nichiren Daishonin talked about the name Japan to illustrate this point. He pointed out that if you say Japan, into your mind comes everything you know about Japan. It may be a little, it may be a lot, depending whether you're Japanese or whether you're not Japanese. But everything you know will be conjured up in that moment that you hear the word Japan. Paddy fields, the bullet train maybe, Taitekeji, Japanese discussion, Japanese home, friends you have there, and so on. This is why the title should contain everything, because it has a hidden effect on people's lives when they hear that title. The sensei called this proudly maintain faith without progression. Sounds very simple. But having studied it, I think one must not forget that title, proudly maintain faith without progression, because that is the essence of what these pages in your book are all about. So I've given the title, as I said, to each part. Part one, which needed to say begins at the beginning, is creating a great river of the common people, or creating a great river of ordinary people. So we'll start in dealing with this long guidance by only taking brief, quite short paragraphs from the first two parts. And this first part runs through to the third page in your books. Halfway down, a small paragraph ends roughly 2 years and 2.5 years respectively. That is the end of part one. Okay? So I'm going to ask Bill, who's kindly going to read for us, just to read 2 short paragraphs. And we'll comment on each a little bit in order to lead us in to what's to come. So the first one is over on your second page, the third paragraph down.
We can reply to the sincerity of fellow members only with sincerity, to their earnestness with earnestness. I believe that those who are striving together for Causton Rupa are like members of a family who enjoy beautiful heart-to-heart ties. Among them, there is neither self-interest nor authoritarianism, only mutual trust and respect. Herein lie the strength and greatness of the Soka Gakkai family.
Just this once, we'll read this again, because everyone's beginning to get into this thing, okay?
We can reply to the sincerity of fellow members only with sincerity, to their earnestness with earnestness. I believe that those who are striving together for Causton are like members of a family who enjoy beautiful heart-to-heart times. Among them, there is neither self-interest nor authoritarianism, only mutual trust and respect. Herein lie the strength and greatness of the Soka Gakkai family.
The sensei here, when he says we can reply only with sincerity to their sincerity, with earnestness to their earnestness, he's talking about our relationship with our fellow members. Because I believe each one of us is practicing Gongs, and each one of us, though we may not know it consciously, is revealing their Buddha state. There is a great sincerity, and there is a great earnestness about, for example, our discussion in a general sense. And what Sensei is referring to there is the fact that therefore the discussion meeting is the field of our human revolution. Because we are faced with such sincerity, it may go in a very negative mind, but we are confused when we're suddenly faced in a general sense with the sincerity of the people at that discussion. So that is the place where we feel we have to struggle with ourselves in order to really respect everyone present. And of course, those people are not people that we probably would normally meet up with, not people that we've selected as our friends. They're just, in a sense, a hodgepodge of humanity into which we are suddenly pitched. And we have to, because of that sincerity, challenge ourselves, challenge our inner self. We simply have to read it, because it reveals to us maybe our shallowness, maybe our slanderous nature. It reveals to us or highlights what's going on in our lives, doesn't it? I'm sure you all agree with me, and you've all had experience. If not, you must be an angel. So this is the vital importance. So far as the membership is concerned, this is the vital importance of the discussion. As I've said several times recently, it is the field of the human revolution. By going to a discussion meeting, one is compelled to do it. Not because anyone orders us to do it, but because of what we think about ourselves. I'm sure you all agree. So therefore, of course, this is why I get so worried when not enough people go to this. Then our attendance, in a general sense, is around about 50%. Because that definitely means 50% of the people, the members, are not doing their human revolution. Because the very fact of actually going to that discussion meeting, no matter what, is part of one's human revolution. This is why we really have to encourage both ourselves and others to go, no matter what. This is why the discussion meeting has always been involved in activities of Causton movement. So even in the Gosho, we can learn the Nichiren Daishonin and ask the local leaders bring their fellow members together and discuss certain matters or Goshos we know now and so on. There's nothing new about it. So Gakkai, for example, didn't invent discussion meetings. Discussion meetings is something that has evolved over the 700 years since Nichiren Daishonin lived. It's the discussion meeting where we have to learn to tolerate difference that we see in each other. And how crucial a point that is, of course, is very clear if we just think of what it is that is called for all human, whether on a national scale or whether on a personal scale or a group. It is the inability of human beings to tolerate the differences they see in us. I don't like those people because. I don't like that guy because. But of course, what Buddhism is teaching is that the differences are essential. They are actually important because it is the uniqueness of each individual which matches the uniqueness of their mission or purpose in life. That's the point. Therefore, the differences are crucial. And the differences, some of which we may not like, arise from that unique nature, which is something different to our own. Of course, the differences may be negative. That's true. No excuse for someone being rude or negative. But on the other hand, this difference from which it arises, the negative side which we are seeing, still has a positive side. So this is why the guidance is always, if you can't bear something, in your district, if you take a look at this person, every time you come to a district meeting, you can't stand. This is what you have to struggle with in order to see the good point in that very different person, because the good point exists in everyone. So I'm sure most of you here have already struggled with this one. And of course, you'll go on struggling. Because the world is full of so many different people. And we have to learn to respect them all. So respect, as someone said this morning down in Chichester, respect arises from compassion. The struggle to bring out Buddha compassion out of us through this practice, through doing our human revolution, which enables us in the end to respect everybody. Respect, in other words, based on the fact that we can see the good point in these people, although they may be so different from it. You all understand? Okay. So that is really, I feel, the basis of what Sensei is saying in that point. And if you go now over to the next page, we'll take another short paragraph. And these two short paragraphs virtually sum up all that's in the first part. The first part ends halfway down that third page. I said before, 2 years and 2.5 years was fixed. The point I want Bill to read is at the end of the first paragraph, top of the page, the last 4 lines.
With the greatest sensitivity to and understanding of their earnest struggles, he replied to their sincerity with complete sincerity. How deeply these few words must have penetrated the hearts of this couple.
So their sense is rounding off this point of attaining human harmony by understanding and tolerating the differences. And he was in particular talking about family who helped him so much when he was exiled on Izu, on the peninsula of Izu, the first exile. The name of Karma. Correct. So we'll leave part 2 now, except one point which I'd like to make, and it all concerns this matter of the differences of people. Differences mean that we also have to be sensitive about the way we actually put across Buddhism to each person. And in that respect, every day in Gongyo, you recite those lines at the end of the Jigage portion. Maiji Zaben and Igario Shujo Tokunin Majodo Sokujo Jubushi. That means, by many different ways, I'm always seeking to lead people to Buddhahood with the minimum delay. It's beautiful, isn't it? Very simple. Mighty Brother in the Irish, if you're popping in the Joel Dolls, or Joel, great. So one can feel, if one understands that, very grateful for reciting those few lines. And the Buddha was always seeking these different ways. As he traveled around northern India, these are, of course, Shakyamuni's words from the Lotus Sutra, and as he traveled around northern India, he met many different types of people, and always he was, from his wisdom, from his Buddha wisdom, approaching them in the way which he felt was best. And we also have to be very flexible in that sense. We can't talk in the same way to one person and another. One may have a skin as thick as an old boot, and another may be very sensitive, just like children. As a father, those of you who are fathers, you know you have to treat your children so differently because their nature and character is so different. Same applies to grown-ups too. When you do shakabuku, you don't blunder in, you know. You have to really, with one's wisdom, even probably while you're beginning to talk to somebody, you're chanting inside you, have the wisdom to put off whatever it is you want to say in the way which suits them best. And then, you know, they'll attain Buddhahood, in the words of those lines, with the minimum delay. So this emphasizes, too, Shakabuku, talking to others about Buddhism, must, in fact, be based on our Buddha state. And that means that we must base it on our Daimoku. It's our Daimoku to do Shakabuku, which will lead us to speak in the very best way for each person. Okay, so let's go on to part 2, which runs down to the top of the next page, the 4th page. Sorry, I've got the same page number with you. It runs from where we are now down to the end of the paragraph, the top of the next page. It is a fact that people are affected by changing circumstances. All right, all got it? Some confusion? All right? Good. Okay, well, so part 2, we can call creating a life of indestructible good fortune. Creating a life of indestructible good fortune. Okay? So there's just 2 parts of this that I want Bill to read. The first is the very first paragraph.
In sumo wrestling, judo, or kendo, you can only develop your strength and raise your level of ability by defeating a strong opponent. Similarly, you cannot complete your Buddhist practice without facing any difficulties or ordeals. It is precisely through overcoming various hardships that you are able to eradicate the negative karma in your life and continue to advance along the great path toward Buddhahood. If one fights for the law, exactly as Nichiren Daishonin teaches in the Gosho, then, as a matter of course, he will encounter difficulties. But you bear in mind that by overcoming difficulties, you can attain Buddhahood and promote Kosen Rupu. You will not have anything to fear. Rather, to experience trials, on this account, the greatest honor of all.
Greatest honor of all. And the more I've gone on with my practice, and I'm sure many of you would agree with me, the more one has realized that everything that happens to one is actually benefit in the end. Every single thing. If we are chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo as best we can, doing Gongyo as best we can, practicing like flowing water, as Nichiren Daishonin guided us to do, everything that happens to us is benefit. Even the things that seem disastrous or negative, in the end, we will discover that they were better. Somehow or other, they perhaps redirected us onto a course which was the right course for us. I don't mean this sort of course. I mean a course in terms of a path. Or maybe we find that it just taught us something negative happening about our own inner self, something that is causing us great distress and unhappiness, though we never saw it before. I promise you that every difficulty you may be in at this moment up to your next is for your benefit. That is how completely I understand. So how many people in this room are going through a period of great difficulty? Wonderful. Great, honest men. It's very interesting. The young men, I asked the same question to the young men's division, the young women's division. The young men's division also held their hands up in great numbers. The young women's division, only a few hands went up. I said, really? Many more people. So, of course, we're going through this for our benefit and so that we can be really great people. This is what it's all about. So, how do we overcome this period of personal difficulty? Depends on our karma. And our karma, since we created it, exactly matches also, in terms of the mystic law, exactly what we need in the way of difficulties to make us strong. So everything in life is so beautifully balanced. And through the effort we make, we can gradually change it, become a great people. Through our karma causing us our particular bit of trouble. I've known people, some of you also have known people, who seem to go on and on and on for so many years, battling away with such an incredible difficulty, or seemingly not making any progress, or still going on making the same old mistake. And people who sit in judgment on them, which of course we shouldn't do, criticize them and say, well, they must be very weak in their practice. Probably old son, he's not doing much time, not be poor chap. Probably a couple of minutes a day or not. But the truth is that everything depends on one's karma. That is the truth of it. Probably everyone is practicing as best they can. Of course they have ups and downs like yo-yos. That's all to do with their karma too. So, Sensei, when I was in Japan last year, talked about 3 types of rice. Suddenly he thought of this, I think, and he said, there are 3 types of rice. This is to the Japanese audience. And everyone nodded their head wisely. And then he said, there's early rice, mid-season rice, and late rice. Human beings are just the same. I'm saying this to you because if some of you feel your life hasn't blossomed yet, it means that you're late rice. And late rice is just as important as early rice or mid-season rice. Each is equally important in terms of life as a whole in this world. So if you're still going through difficulties, please don't despair. If you feel you've been practicing a long time and still you haven't broken through something, you will, provided you keep practicing. Because you may be late rice. I guess I was very late rice because I didn't even find the gospel until I was 50. So that is the point. We can't make judgment. And that goes back, of course, too, to what we discussed before about the differences between. We cannot judge, and unfortunately, it's a human tendency to want to judge everything. But we mustn't do it. We have to fight it in us because we haven't got the slightest idea what anyone else's karma is like. We may be able to see it manifesting itself at this moment. We don't actually know what their karma is like, any more than we know what our own karma is like. How can we judge what their karma is? So this is another great challenge in this whole matter of our relationship with other human beings. Not sitting in judgment on, because we bloody well don't know. That is the fact. And our judgment will be totally, totally wrong. I've fallen into the trap myself. I thought when I was going to do a home visit that I knew all about that member's life. And I'd heard various things that were happening to them. And I'd made the stupid error of judging situation so much so that I worked out in my head probably already the best way to talk. And always, even when you sit there talking to another member about their struggles and problems, you don't know really at that point. So often you find that you haven't got a clue how you can help. And in this respect, as I said on that first day, I'm talking to you all as leaders, because every member of NSCK is a leader. Every member who has the Causton and those who haven't got the Causton and Naitoku and who found them, they're leaders compared to those who have not got the Causton or who have not found them. We cannot judge, and to prejudge is disaster, just a waste of time. The only way one can find the right way to speak to someone to help them, or indeed for that matter to teach someone about Buddhism, is while you sit talking to them. This is my opinion. Whilst you sit talking to them and you're listening to them carefully with your ears inside you, you're chanting Nam-myoho-renge-kyo. Then, at some point, you'll suddenly say something almost without realizing, which really penetrates that person's heart. So, please be careful. Please don't fall into the trap of prejudging, because it's also the next step to flower, and it's something we really have to watch. And I think that is what Sensei is reminding us about here. So then the next little bit we want to read is the bottom of that page.
It was not only the persecutors of the Daishonin who were unable to understand his inner world, there were some among his disciples who were swayed and lost heart at seeing the difficulties which beset him. We can surmise that something like the following must have gone through the minds of such people. Nichiren is being severely persecuted. Maybe it's all over for him. This is my chance to quit faith and from now on watch out for myself. It is a fact that people are affected by changing circumstances.
So this is very possible. We've seen it in history on more than one occasion, as you know. When Nichiren Daishonin died, those priests who were just leaning on him collapsed, ran away, out of fear, joined the other sects. The only one of the senior priests who stood firm was Nichiren. Of course, also strongly supported by some of the great laymen of those times, laymen and lay women. We saw it in history at the beginning of World War II, when 25 leaders, including Mr. Makiguchi, the president, and his number two, his right hand, Mr. Toda, were in prison. Out of those 25, 23 gave in under, of course, severe interrogation and sometimes psychological torture. 23 gave in. The only ones who didn't give in were Mr. Toda and Mr. Makiguchi. how would we behave in same circumstances? With the whole weight of the government and the military dictatorship, the law, the dictatorial law, which they supported, ran the country, how would we feel? Would we stand? Three farmers by the Sahara, much earlier time, stood. Everyone in that area up Sahara stood, and they stood and never gave in. That's why we still chant for them when we go to their temple. See their grave, they're moving. These three people, they'd only had 3 years practice. Those three people who never gave in until they were actually beheaded. Even after that, Nichiren Daishonin Buddhism lived on. But at the end, during World War II, there were only 2 people who held it together. Incredible force. So we may think this is far removed from us. It's normal. That sort of situation is removed. But supposing, everyone in your office or everyone in your family threatened in some way, use blackmail, say you'd be out. I'm sure you stand firm. If someone said to you, okay, you're out, you're an outcast now. Oh, unthinkable. Therefore, you can probably nod our heads and say, no, but I wonder if we would. So strong is social tie. So strong is that feeling in some people of doing what they feel everyone else will approve. It's worth reflecting on. I personally, in truth, feel that you'd all be incredible. I think NSUK would be incredible if they were underfunded. I really do. But nevertheless, we need to think about it. And in thinking about it, to see maybe some little weakness which we're determined to challenge. So even to this day, people don't understand Nichiren Daishonin. Even today, 700 years later, in a more open, understanding society, people don't understand him. Scholars still refer to him as a militant national because they read the Risho Ankoparon upside down. What I mean by that is that they pinned on certain questions in the Risho Ankoparon, which are given by a traveler. Who? Nichiren Daishonin, who is the host. They got it all upside down. Scholars. People who are burning midnight oil every day. Deeply studying Nichiren Daishonin's Buddhism. And because of that, the university libraries in this country are still filled with totally erroneous articles, statements, theses about poor Nichiren Daishonin. You go to the British Museum, you'll see plaques and things against pictures of Nichiren Daishonin, which are totally erroneous. It's an enormous job. It takes us 50 years to get this right. But we'll do it in the end. That's the purpose of the Institute of Oriental Philosophy, which we're starting in Catholic law. It's extraordinary. But nobody understood Nichiren Daishonin. He was a religious revolution. Of course, he was revolutionary because he was teaching a whole new way of looking at Buddhism. In fact, when it came to debate, he could prove to everyone its exact correctness in the orthodox flow from what Shakyamuni taught. But despite that, still people continue to refuse to understand the Shandarshan. And in a way, it's the same now with President Nikeda. No one understands what the person is doing.